Hello, my name is John Rose, and one of the many hats I wear is a wellness consultant. So today, in this video, I'd like to take a closer look on the war on cancer. And I'm going to follow this video up on the war on drugs, because that will help us understand why there's a war on cancer. In fact, one of the best places to start would be to look at my file on the war metaphor. But before we go there, I'd like to show you this real clever cartoon by Mike Adams. Race for the cure. Over here, what have we got? Big money. And here we are, these fools chasing that dangling carrot. The cure is just around the corner, right? We're supporting the cancer industry. Every time you race for the cure, you're supporting the cancer industry. You're part of the problem. You're giving energy to a system that doesn't work. You're well intended, but you could be labeled a useful idiot because you don't understand what's going on. Now, useful idiot is a term that Lenin used to describe people that helped him promote his agenda, his cause. Same thing's happening in this way. And remember, everything in our society of any significance has everything to do with our health or our lack of health. People who rule the world could not rule us if we were healthy. That's why our experts are not our so-called experts. And I'm going to illustrate that in this video and the follow-up video. So let's take a quick look at the war metaphor. Okay, in this file you'll see a quote by Herbert Shelton from one of his audio tapes. Why are they poisoning the sick? Because they're carrying on a warfare against attacking entities. This is why they are, our so-called experts are tricked into believing in the germ theory of disease. So that there are entities attacking us, and therefore we are justified in attacking back. We need weapons to attack. Remember, it's a war metaphor, and that was very well explained in Dr. John R. Lee's book, What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause. This symptom/drug approach points the way to what is amiss in mainstream medicine today. It suffers from a fixation on the drug treatment of health problems. The typical medical treatment program for almost any given problem follows a war metaphor. Find the villain and destroy it. If a villain cannot be found, look for the destruction left in its wake. That is, treat the disease by killing it, or failing that, treat the symptoms. So what we don't have a healthcare system. We have a treatment peddling system for lifestyle-related problems. So one of the first things I do when I actually work with people with cancer, and I've worked with a lot of people with cancer, you can listen to the Dr. Roba interview, and you can hear the people talking about when I worked with Rudy Tomjanovich, who had bladder cancer. And within a short period of time, his cancer was completely gone. Now, there are several things I do when I work with people with cancer. One of them is to send them my list of files. Now, I'll be the first to admit I don't specialize in cancer. I'm not an oncologist, I'm not a pathologist, but I can guarantee you one thing. When you look at my list of files, and I'll just let me see if I can kind of give you a little stroll of that while I'm talking. You can screen save this anytime you want to. I studied this subject extensively, and I'd put my knowledge up against any oncologist and pathologist any day of the week, because they don't study any of these things you're looking at right now. They don't understand the healing benefits of raw food and plants. They just don't see the big picture. And this will become more evident when I show some more of my files. Again, I'm just kind of glancing through my files that I have on cancer. And what you're going to see when we get to the end of this is that I have 140 files on cancer. Again, I don't specialize in cancer. I specialize in the whole body. But I study things extensively so I can understand the whole body and understand where these clowns are coming from. So when I send people that file, I also make sure they know about Dr. Lorraine Day. And Dr. Lorraine Day is a doctor, and the very first thing I have my students do is get her very first video, and she put out about a dozen videos, and her first one is "Cancer doesn't scare me anymore." And she says, well, I'm not saying that because I'm a doctor, I'm saying it because I used to have cancer and I got rid of it naturally. So listen to what she says in this file. I can tell you this, I am a physician, and I did not learn one thing in medical school about the true healing of the body. No doctor does. Every doctor only learns drugs. We learn to diagnose the case by evaluating the symptoms. When we pick a drug to treat those symptoms, then we pick a drug to treat those symptoms. We never address the underlying cause of the problem. Again, monas ponens, putting the cart before the horse, treating a symptom for a lifestyle-related problem. Now, listen to this one here. Cancer is cancer. Whether it's prostate cancer, stomach cancer, brain cancer, breast cancer, lymphoma, melanoma, leukemia, cancer of the blood, or any other type of cancer. All cancer is a result of an immune system that is not working properly. Fortunately, all cancer responds to rebuilding the immune system by natural methods. The immune system cannot be rebuilt with drugs because all drugs have side effects that eventually suppress the immune system and damage the body even more. Now, I have a file on that. You can see I have a related file. All cancers are the same. And I'll go to that real briefly. And then I'm going to go to this article that she wrote, Your Doctor Cannot Cure Cancer. So let's go to, where is that file at? Chemotherapy. Here we go. All cancers are the same. All right, again, we see that sentence, paragraph from Lorraine Day. I brought it over here. Cancer is cancer. Why is it highlighted magenta? Because that's what this file is all about. All cancers are the same. Now look at this. After that, we have an article. Research officially discovers that all cancers are the same, and it misses almost the whole story. That's one article. Now, anytime you see my files and you see a font size that's 18, that means that's an article title. Now, in my older files, I used to use real big fonts, and as you'll see in a moment, to designate what I thought was important. Now I just changed the color of my fonts. So there's that one. Here's another one. Cancer shares gene pattern studies affirm. So there's another article. Here's another article. Once again, that talks about the fact that all cancers are the same. So I'm going to go ahead and get that baby out of there. And Dr. Lorraine Day, we're going to take you to one of my most impressive, one of my most respected articles that you wrote, and one of the most impressive articles I've seen anybody write. I'm really impressed with Dr. Day. Oh, they changed this up. That was it. Darn it, they tricked me on this one. Where is your doctor? Here you go. Now this is Dr. Lorraine Day's file that I created on Your Doctor Cannot Cure Your Cancer because he cannot prevent or cure his own. Now this was a 4,849 word article, and then there was a screen picture of it that had maybe 100. So this is like a 5,000 word article, and I always send this to my cancer patients. And I also did a recap on this. Again, your doctor can't cure your cancer. Why? Because he can't prevent or cure his own. Now I did a recap of this. Whenever I study something and someone says something more than once, I keep track of it because I like to see how they said it all at one time. And that's what I do with everything I study. I always do a recap of everything, and you'll see in a file in a moment. When I went back to do that with the law of attraction, I could only recap one thing, and that was what we don't want. And I'll show you that probably in my next video on the war on drugs. Although it may apply here too. I'll go ahead and show it to you here too also. But anyway, I recapped this article 5 times because she pile-drived the hell out of this article, telling people over and over what they needed to hear. Now, if you look at my first recap, by the way, by the way we live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. By the way we have been living. So she said this over and over and over, and here are my 5 condensed recaps, but then I show you the whole sentence where it came from to make sure I didn't take it out of context. But in this case, I have 10 sentences that back up those 5 recaps. My second recap would be lifestyle factors, which is very similar to by the way we live, right? And again, what you'll see here is she's basically telling people we're doing it to ourselves, and in this case, she pile drove that message 14 times. And again, what I do after a condensed version of it, I show you the complete sentence, and in this case, there's exactly 14 sentences that will help you understand we're doing it to ourselves. Third recap, powerful. I love this one. Willing to obtain and spend the time. I'm so impressed with Dr. Day because she understands that we have to go through 2 doorways to solve all of our problems. We have to, first of all, be willing to obtain the knowledge we're missing. So one of the main things I want to do when I teach people, if they want to learn, and this is important, I want them to understand this. I don't want to be their wellness consultant for the rest of their life. I'm going to teach them everything they need to know in a very short period of time, make it simple for them so they'll know what to do in the future. So they need to understand why they are sick and that there's a oneness to disease, and they'll know what to do from here on out. So they have to be willing to find the knowledge. That's the first doorway we got to go through. If we go back to my schematic, remember my special teaching tool, uses knowledge in a way that's never been seen before. If you haven't studied this yet, you're missing out, my friends, because you can use this to evaluate all different types of things that you study and read. See, I already had that up here to this section. If we go back up to this, the ultimate schematic, the first doorway we have to go through, I guess I should have pulled up this one because it shows the doorways better. I actually had that one open for a reason to go to there. But again, what we have to do is there are, make sure I'm showing you the right one. Yep, this is the one I want to show you. What we have to do, this is the first doorway we have to go through. We've got to be willing to obtain the knowledge we need. That's piece number one with a circle around it, a circle with a dotted line. That's what we need to find. So what Dr. Day is saying, we got to be willing to obtain the knowledge we need, and then we got to be willing to apply it. And that's the second doorway we got to go through. So I'm really impressed with Dr. Day because she understood, yes, there are two doorways we have to go through. And then she also understands some more pieces to the puzzle that I'll come back to in just a moment. So we got to be willing to obtain and spend. So what does she say? We have to be willing to obtain the proper commitments, study them diligently and repeatedly. Determination, commitment, see I bolded that one. Tenacity and self-control to change his habits. Again, we got to be willing to apply. Okay, so let's go back to the ultimate schematic one more time. And what she's saying here has about the commitment. Well, I don't want to show that one. I want to show the one prior to that one. Let's come back to the one prior to that. Here we go. This is what I had open to initially. If we look at our willingness factors, there are 10 ways we have apathy. Initially, I had piece 18.1 where we're unwilling to admit that we have false knowledge. So now that's what Dr. Lorraine Day is saying. We have to be willing to admit that we're doing it to ourselves, but we're doing it ignorantly. We have to be willing to admit that we don't know. But then when I realized that but then the more I worked on those 3 stages of knowledge, I finally realized, well, no, I need to add 3 more pieces. And this is the only time in my schematic where I have a piece within a piece within a piece. So what I did is, again, I used to have piece 18.1, unwilling to admit that we have false knowledge. Now I have we're unwilling to admit that we have false knowledge in place of the knowledge we need. That's in the first stage of knowledge. And we're unwilling to admit that we're making mistakes in the second stage of knowledge. And we're unwilling to admit that most of our problems are 100% within our control in the third stage of knowledge. So I added those 3 pieces onto it afterwards. So that's what Dr. Lorraine Day is saying. By going to the next recap. We do it ignorantly. None of us do it on purpose. We do it ignorantly, but we do it just the same. Again, so we have to be willing to admit that we have false knowledge. And then I love the 5th recap. Disease doesn't fall out of the sky. They don't just happen. We did it to ourselves over and over and over. Of course, this ties into what she says right off the bat. So here are 11 ways. She pile drove that message 11 times here. She pile drove this message 6 times. Again, this one 14 times. So she really pile drove this over and over and over. And if you look at what she pile drove, these are the things we need to understand. Disease doesn't fall out of the sky. When you get cancer at the age of 50, 60, or 30, or whenever, you did it to yourself. What if you're born with it? Well, that's where your mother did it to you. Your dad did it. We can inherit bad disease, bad genes. We can be born with advanced stages of disease now because genetics has to do with lifestyle choices from our ancestors, from our parents, etc. So it all goes back to lifestyle choices. Even if it comes from our genes, it all ties back into our lifestyle choices. So this is one of the articles I send out to my students to help them understand what they want to learn from me. So again, it's a war metaphor. And then to really understand the war on drugs and understand the money aspect of it. Remember, money is only the tool of control, but we have the subsequent need for money. So what our so-called experts do is they really have put our doctors in a predicament where they make so much money, they don't want to change and blow what they're doing. So here's my file on chemotherapy. I don't always send this file out to people unless I know they're willing to believe that doctors don't have the answer, because if they believe in chemotherapy, this can actually destroy their confidence in something. And that's the only reason why this would ever work in any case, is because of the belief that it did. So this file on chemotherapy, I'll let you take a look at this picture real quick. Before and after pictures of Patrick Swayze. On the left, 57 years old. Good looking guy, wasn't he? After chemo, look at him. My God, look at him, look at him. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, there's a reason why that's at the top of my file on chemotherapy. Look at the best of the file preview. Chemotherapy drugs have never been double-blind study. Well, wait a second, double-blind study, double-blind study. These drugs don't work. More than 70% of other oncologists have confirmed to him that if they had cancer, they would refuse chemotherapy. They know it's bullshit. Here's somebody saying 75% of doctors say they'd refuse chemotherapy. I could go through this, but I'm not going to go all the way through this. Those are the main things. There are three main areas of harm doing chemotherapy: weakening the body's natural defenses, and that's the main thing Dr. Lorraine Day points out in her video, Cancer Doesn't Scare Me Anymore. Again, that's one of the main things I want people to do, because fear will make things worse. We got to realize this is not a death sentence. Don't believe what doctors say. They don't know that what they do lowers the body's immune system, defense system, and what we need to do is make it better. So the first thing it does, it weakens our body. And like Dr. Day says, you wouldn't give this to someone who's healthy. It's not going to make them better. Why would you give it to someone who's already sick? Second thing, it increases mortality. It increases, doesn't it? Make you live longer. And then it decreases the quality of life. So I've had ignorant people say, oh, it's better to do chemo than nothing. No, it's not. The last thing we want to do is add more poisons into the body. And chemotherapy comes in at about a 2 pH. Extremely acidic. Ask any chemist what causes cancer. You know what they're going to say? It's an acid burn. So most of the cancer we get in our body, most of the cancer cells come from our acid waste burning it. If it forms a tumor, if there's a bunch of, if all those particles in our lymph system amass together and form a big mass, a tumor mass, it can be as hot as 3 pH. That's going to burn cancer cells. So why do they study the cell that's been damaged? They should be looking at the tumor. Well, what is the tumor? It's part of our lymph system. Oh, we don't look at the lymph system. That's why doctors don't get any of this. All of our disease is coming, most of our disease is coming from the lymph system backing up. Now, if we look at this file on chemotherapy, do I need to look any more? Let me see. Let me look at the end of my file preview and see if there was anything in here that I wanted to mention. Yeah, this is what I really wanted to point out, matter of fact. If we look at this article here, why don't oncologists refund cancer patients when their chemotherapy fails? Well, let's just glance down here where I bolded something a little bit bigger here. Chemotherapeutic drugs are the only classification of drugs that the prescribing doctor can get a direct cut of. So if we go up here, right here, this is the article prior to that. Another often overlooked fact about the oncology racket is that oncologists operate like businessmen, purchasing chemotherapy drugs at wholesale prices and reselling them to patients for scandalous prices. They're the only segment of the medical industry complex, it turns out, that can legally cut out the pharmaceutical middleman and hoard all the profits for themselves. No other doctor can buy drugs from the pharmaceutical company and sell them to you. Talk about conflict of interest. Oncologists make huge profits by pushing chemotherapy drugs on gullible, frightened patients. So when you go to an oncologist, what are they going to say to you? Listen to this. Chris recalls being told by the doctor that if you don't do chemo, you are insane. The kicker being the doctor's follow-up statement that I'm not just saying this because I need your business. Yeah, right. You buy this like at $5,000, turn around and sell it to us at $12,000 or $23,000 or whatever unbelievable markup. How much money are you guys making? Well, sometimes up to 2/3 of their overall income is coming from selling chemotherapy drugs. So our subsequent need for money is keeping doctors where we are. This is different than greed. Now, greed does come into this picture somewhat. When someone goes to an oncologist and they feel a lump, they're thinking, well, I know it's not cancerous, but God, if I can call it cancerous, you know, I can make enough money off selling chemo to this person to buy my daughter a new car to go off to college. In fact, if I do 2 more, I'll be able to pay her tuition for the first year, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's how they're looking at it. So greed does come into it, but even if greed doesn't enter into it, it's that subsequent need for money, because if you're making a lot of money, you end up not having a whole lot extra. As anybody knows who ends up making more money, when you have more, you just end up spending more usually. So you have a lot of expenses when you make a lot of money, and you don't want to give that up, and that's what would happen if doctors admitted that they're incompetent and what they're doing is not working. So again, what we need to understand is doctors don't have any of the solutions. Now, if you're doing chemotherapy, make sure you do probiotics. They found that people who survive chemotherapy are doing it because they have good friendly bacteria in their colon. So if you are already taking chemotherapy, or you know anyone who won't listen to anything else, at least get them to take probiotics. So I got a file on that. I didn't open that up. Let me take a look at some other files I want to show you. Let me see here. Cancer, and I want to leave that one toward the end. Chemotherapy. Yeah, let's take a look at this one here. Death by medicine. Doctors are the #1 cause of death. Now, there are articles that came out that said, no, we're the 3rd leading cause of death. Well, that was a study they did. Hey, we're only the 3rd leading cause of death. Poppycock. You guys are #1. Don't sell yourself short. You're #1. In this study they did, it was 783,000. Here's that number. Almost 784,000 people were being killed by conventional medicine. There's the total right there. Now, this figure does not include all the people who could have been saved if they didn't do their treatments that don't go into these things. Doctors don't know anything about how to reverse diseases. A lot of people are dying, and this doesn't include this. This is just the numbers we already know from the drug interactions and surgeries and things like that. So interestingly, when doctors go on strike, the death rate drops. The death rate drops when doctors go on strike by, I don't know if I have anything in here on this file or not. I think it's by something like 40 to 60%. What were the numbers? Here we go. 50 of those 51. I'm not going to pull that file up. Not important. So we don't want to trust our so-called experts. They don't have the solutions. We are the solution. What do we have to do? We have to take control of our lives. We have to understand that we're doing it to ourselves. And things are only getting worse because our dietary choices are getting worse. If we're looking at the cancer statistics, in 1900 supposedly there was 1 in 30 people getting cancer. That number might be low because we might not have been able to diagnose as well back then. In 1950 it was 1 in 5. Then 1 in 4 in 1960, 1 in 3 in 70, and now we're up to around 1 in 2 in some cases. So cancer is on the increase. Now let's put things into perspective. If we look at the last 30 some odd years, or actually the first 30 years after the war cancer was staged, we spent over $200 billion on research on cancer. During that time, we had 1.56 million medical papers published on cancer. And yet, in the same amount of time, we unraveled the human genome in 18 years. We put a man on the moon, supposedly, after the space program was officiated 9 years. I say that jokingly. We developed an atomic weapon in 17 months under the Manhattan Project during the World War II, before we even were sure what atomic energy was, in 17 months. And yet, $200 billion later, 30-some years later, that was the first 30 years, we got zip on the improvement of these 4 major killers of disease. Those 4 killers were lung, breast, prostate, and colorectal. So we're spending more money, more time, over 1.5 million research papers, and we haven't found anything. Oh, we got to find a cure for cancer. It's a distraction. There are no cures for lifestyle-related problems. The war on cancer it really has to do with the war on drugs. And that's the next video I'm going to go into. So what do we do if we come down with cancer? It's simple. We do everything we can to help the body. Now, one of the many things we can do is induce apoptosis, which is where marijuana comes into play. Now, here's my file on cancer and marijuana. Remember, it's one of my 140 files that I have. If we take a quick look at this file, we'll take a look at this section right here, where this is also my file on marijuana, where we have these 31 different categories, and each one has studies in it. The first category, cannabis kills tumor cells. There are 18 studies done that have references and links to this. In fact, let's go ahead and go to that. I'll take this part right here. I don't want to take the C because I numbered those. They didn't number it, but I did. Remember, I'm anal about numbering all those things. Did it not show up? Why? Here it is right here. Nope. Why didn't that pop up? Let's go to this. And go down. There we go. Here's the article. Why weed? The government patented it. That's why. Okay, now here they are right here. Cannabis kills tumor cells. This is the first of 31 categories. The first one, here they are, 18 references, studies done. Cannabis cures colorectal cancer. 2, 1. Okay, let's go back to the top and do a recap. So if it has more than 5, I put like 7, 6. Otherwise, there's 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2. You know, here's this one, cures cancer in general. There's 10 studies done on that. There's 5 for leukemia. Here we go. Cannabis partially, fully induced cell death in cancer. 35 studies done on that. Cell death, that's what apoptosis is. That's why it's color-coded the same. So here's another separate section on it. They had 1 on there. So there's really 36 related files on apoptosis, cell death. But you can look through this file, and I'm going to go into this in more detail in my next file, or my next video, where I'm going to do it on the war on drugs, and we'll look at my file on marijuana, an amazing file, where you look what it does. Brain cancer, lung cancer, prostate, liver, on and on and on. It's good for so many things. It's amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this video up. Remember, healthcare is self-care. There's a war on cancer for a reason. We're being duped, my friends. It's all about being distracted. We think that disease is an entity and we got to attack it. No. Disease is part of our bodily process. It's part of our feedback system. And if we don't like what we got, all we got to do is take a look at what we're doing and what we think. And the best way to start there is to go down below in the description box and take a look at a video I did on the best way to take the first step on this process or on this journey. It's a solid food vacation. Go down below to the first step and check out my seminar. Watch my videos on the Deborah Duncan Show and listen to Dr. Roba. Again, you can hear him talk about how I worked with Rudy Tomjanovich, who had bladder cancer and got rid of the bladder cancer. So it's time to get excited. It's time to test an idea. Time is coming. When you do, my friends, you're in for a treat.